Okay, Ostinato book, volume 1. I'm going to demonstrate my approach to a better understanding of the voices of your drum set, and what my approach would be is if I were a beginner learning these particular ostinatos. I'm going to cover ostinato number 1, number 2, number 4, and number 9 from the book. Now the first one is just a standard kind of rock pattern, which I'm playing eighth notes on my my hi-hat, and I'm playing 2 and 4 on the snare drum, a backbeat or a fat back pattern. I'm going to be playing eighth notes like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. But notice when I'm playing the hi-hat, I'm going like this: down, up, down, up, down, up. The reason for that, it's very musical and it pushes the tempo that you're in and locks it in, as opposed to that sounds, it's not incorrect to play that, but it doesn't sound very musical or very colorful, and there's no texture to that. So by playing this, it's giving me 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, what I do with the left hand is when I hit the snare drum, I'm hitting the rim and the snare drum at the same time. If you're not accustomed to that, what's going to happen is you're going to miss a couple times. That's okay. You will find that spot and be consistent with it eventually. So I'm going to play. See, I missed it. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when you're playing this particular ostinato pattern for the beginners, we're trying to maneuver the bass drum throughout this pattern on top. The ostinato pattern is the pattern that's being played on top. That is a consistent pattern which I do not break. Okay? And it's not only consistent rhythmically, but also sound-wise. I'm out going, then 2 different sounds. It's not very colorful or musical. So I'm maintaining the same sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my approach would be, because the bass drum is going to be the dominating voice throughout these ostinatos and the remainder of the book. The objective here is to play the ostinato pattern on top and maneuver your bass drum within these patterns. And so therefore I want the bass drum to be dominant, not, okay, so very forceful, very dictate that bass drum, hit it, pronounce it. So I recommend a counting system. For example, line 1, the ostinato without the bass drum, just the top, is eighth notes on the hi-hat, 2 and 4 on the snare drum. And a lot of people will approach it as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and they say, well, I can't get my foot in there. Well, the reason why, because they're not slowing it down and getting to understand the placement of the bass drum. So what I highly recommend is a 16th note formation count. It's 1 E and the 2 E and the 3 E and the 4 E and the 1 E. I'm exaggerating the motion. When I sit and play, I don't sit and play like that. That's what's occurring, and that's what you want to reinforce. So that's just the ostinato with the top, the hi-hat and the snare drum. Now let's put the bass drum in. The bass drum is going to be on the counts of 1 and 3. That's the first movement. I'm counting 16ths. 1 E and a 2 E and 3 E and a 4 1 E and a 2 E and 3 E and a 4 E and. Now, it doesn't really sound like too much of anything, but it's absolutely correct rhythmically and sound-wise. As you keep doing it and doing it, it's going to get a little easier and it's going to flow a lot better. 1, 2, 3, basic rock pattern. Sort of the end result. It's a moderate tempo. Boom, 5, 1, 2, 3 and the 4 E and the 1 E and the 2, 3 E and the 4. Okay, the next movement, we're going to permutate the bass drum. The bass drum on the first movement was on the counts of 1 and 3. The next guy will be on the count of the E of 1 and the E of 3. So again, we're establishing the ostinato in a 16th note formation. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Now, I'm going to apply the bass drum within that pattern. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Okay, that was the first permutation. The second permutation, instead of now playing the bass drum on the E of 1 and the E of 3, we're going to play the bass drum on the and of 1 and the and of 3. The movement on top remains the same. The motion on top remains the same, so I'm consistent with my sound. Like I said, I'm exaggerating it so that you can see it and work with it and reinforce it and make it stronger. So now the bass drum now is going to be on the and of 1 and the and of 3. Whether I'm counting out loud or just counting to myself, the formation that I'm counting is 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So the bass drum is going to be on the and of 1 and 3. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and. The next permutation, we move the bass drum over again, one more. So it was just on the and of 1 and the and of 3. So one more would be the da of 1 and the da of 3. And again, 16th note formation going on, whether I'm verbally saying it out loud or thinking it to myself. The voices remain the same on top, consistent in sound, and that bass drum is dominating the da of 1 and the da of 3. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and. Now you take each one separately, those 4, and work them, and work them. The more you work them, the more familiar you become with them, the more relaxed they become, and the more they're going to flow. The challenge is to play number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then back over again to 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have the total control of that bass drum. 1, 2, here you go. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1, 3, 1. Back. See? Now get the second one. Now, we're not after playing fast, we're just becoming accurate, even, consistent. That eventually, with a bass player or with the band that you're playing, will form a groove. Right now, that's just a pattern. The second guy is ostinato. I'm going to have a little coffee here. The second guy is ostinato number 2. And what that really is, and we're going to take a journey on this eventually, is the stick control book, an interpretation of the stick control book. If I did line 2 of the stick control book, left, right, and played it in 8th note formation, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and I'm going to substitute my left hand for my left foot. So, in my right hand, I'm going to play either on the bell of my ride cymbal or the crown of the ride cymbal, or the body, whatever you want to call it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take the second line of stick control book and orchestrate a whole book from it because there's all types of foot patterns from page 5, 6, and 7 that we're going to be working from on all the ostinatos. But this one here, I'm making you more aware of where I got this from. But it's a very standard kind of thing that's being played musically with a band. Okay, so it's 1 E and 2 E and. I'm going to play 2 and 4. The 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and. Then again, that's the ostinato, and it's consistent in sound. Occasionally, I just might play the ride cymbal so you get the ands, or I can play the ands. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense there, but you can do that. Right now, we're trying to establish that particular sound. Now, my approach, again, is a 16th note formation because we're going to need to control the space in between the notes so we could hit the bass drum and dominate that bass drum as the dominant voice. So the first pattern, the bass drum is on the count of 1 and 3. So I have 1 E, I'm sorry, 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and. Remember, keep the sound consistent. That bell of the cymbal sounds the same. The hi-hat is played 1, 2, 3, 4, sounding the same. That chick, I'm playing that with my heel up. So I get that real closed, tight, short sounding chick from the hi-hat. And my snare drum again, 2 and 4. And that was the first guy. That was on the count of 1 and 3. Now we permutate that to the E of 1 and the E of 3. Okay, I'm going to play maybe just the ostinato pattern by itself, then put the bass drum in so you can hear it. 1 E and 2 E and 3. Here you go, bass drum. 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and. That's the second guy. And the sequence follows that permutation formula from the E of 1 and the E of 3, now to the and of 1 and to the and of 3. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and. Okay, and now the next guy, instead of the and of 1 and the and of 3, now we're going to the da of 1 and the da of 3. 1 E and 2 and 3 E. Sorry. 1 E and 2. This camera's driving me crazy. Let me play that slower. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E. When I look at the cameras, I get all turned around because everything is kind of backwards. All right, that's the last guy of that particular pattern on the da. Okay, 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4. Okay. It's very early in the morning. It's actually, I'm on the East Coast, and it's 6 a.m., so I'm just kind of waking up. All right, the next ostinato is going to be the paradiddle ostinato. Okay. The paradiddle, I'm taking in a 16th note formation. I'm just going to accent the paradiddle on the count of 2 and 4. I'm playing the rights and the lefts between my hi-hat and my snare drum. So this is what I have. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4. Okay, so now, what's going to happen, that's the ostinato pattern. The consistency of sound. Now I'm going to play the first pattern, which is the counts of 1 and 3 with the bass drum. Now remember, let that explode. However, do not let that right foot or the bass drum dominate or dictate the volume of your hands. You need to separate it. 2, E, and the 3, E, and 4, E, and The next guy is on the E of 1 and the E of 3. Now this is where the trouble starts with this kind of thing, because this is where you need to really separate the bass drum and the hi-hat or the left hand. Do not let the bass drum dictate the sound. 1, E. Hear it? It didn't tell me to play this louder. I just dropped it as the ghost note. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4, E, and E, and 2, Okay, the next guy, the bass drum is going to be on the and of 1 and the and of 3. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4, E, and 1, E, and 2. Sorry. 3, E, and 4, E, and Okay, next guy is on the da of 1 and the da of 3. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4, E, and 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4. And again, you want to play each one separately and then challenge it. Do the first pattern once, the second, third, fourth, and go back to 1, 2, 3, 4 over and over again. I'll play a little moderate tempo. Back. So on and so forth. Okay, finally, the last guy is ostinato number 9. And there's some prerequisites that I give on the drum pad, doing 16th notes with accents. But this guy, what we're going to do, we're not going to accent all of the downbeat. We're just going to accent the counts of 2 and 4. And all remainder of the notes are going to be played on Mr. Hi-Hat here. So I have 1, E, and 2, and 3, E, and 4, E, and 1, E, and 2, 3, E, and 4, E, and Now the same sequence of events is going to occur. Now this is just the beginning of all these patterns. The permutation, again, on the counts of 1 and 3, then the E of 1, the E of 3, the and of 1, the and of 3, the da of 1, the da of 3, and back. So let's do the first guy. The bass drum is going to be on the counts of 1 and 3. 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2, 3 E and 4. Second guy, the bass drum, again, is going to be moved over 1 on the count of the E of 1 and the E of 3. However, do not let that bass drum dictate the volume of the hands on top. So now I have 1 E, not 1 E. Okay? So it's 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4. Third guy. The bass drum is now moved over again. Instead of the E of 1 and the E of 3, we're moving it over now to the and of 1 and the and of 3, maintaining the constant sound on top. 1 E and a 2 E a, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a. Okay? And the last one. The bass drum now is on the da of 1 and the da of 3. Nice and slow. 1 E and da 2 and da 3 E and da 4 E. Again. 1 E and da 2 and da 3 E and da 4 E and da. Now what you want to do is challenge it. Play number 1 however many times you like until you feel good with it. Then go to the second one. Each one has its own personality and a different feel. However, it's the same rhythmic pattern on top, but the bass drum makes you go to another dimension. The challenge here is playing from line 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 over and over again, making the change smooth. So I hope this kind of helps out, and kind of I was in the mood to make a video, and you know, why not? Let's make it be helpful to everybody and work hard at it. And if there's any questions, give me a shout. Okay. Thank you.